Let's take this time to remind all the viewers out there that there's multiple avenues of sources of information that they can look to learn more about competitive Shadowverse, and one of them happens to be our website. If you go to shadowverse.nge.io, there's a link that you can go to see player profiles. You can just click their name, and there's live standings, so you can figure out who's making it into the regional finals live as the matches are being played. So definitely check that out. But we're jumping into the match. There it is, Fantasy versus Lest here. And Fantasy's getting prepped. He's getting ready to go. Looks like our matchup is going to be Rune versus Shadow. Let's see how it plays out.
All right.
This is bad. This is the two non-blood classes.
Yeah, I mean, when the intro animation was happening, I was just crossing my fingers. Not the blood leaders, not the blood leaders. But I suppose that's going to be pretty inevitable eventually. For the time being, this is another one of those matches I feel like we've actually casted like a billion times so far. It's like two probably of the most consistent lists we'll probably see between Mid Shadow and Burn Dirt. So after having casted it this many times, have you decided on a winner yet?
You know, again, we're back in the same spot, Mofu. Every time if Burn Dirt Rune is involved, it's the winner.
Even against Mid Shadow, you think?
Oh, especially against Mid Shadow. You have Piercing Runes, you have Magic Illusionist, which is just better Shadow minion, right?
Pretty much, that's his name. The file name.
And you also have Master Mage Levi. Master Mage Levi blows it out, man.
Like, funnily enough as well, I feel like with this start, we've not really seen someone open this many telescopes, but Fantasy gets to kind of effectively use these like insights and just cycle through his deck, so it'll be much more likely he actually gets to the meat of the deck sooner than later, which is something actually, yeah, as I mentioned, I feel like this is the first time we've found that kind of hand.
Is Fantasy singing? I'm gonna assume he's singing K-pop right now.
You can imagine.
That's
with
what
his,
I listen to when I play Shadowverse. So.
Is it really? I've never heard it on your stream.
Yeah.
I usually hear new Javis.
Oh my god.
Is that K-pop? Come on.
Sometimes, okay, it's not all the time. All right, fine,
Okay,
Mofu, you
gotcha.
caught me. You got me, Mofu.
The call out.
You got me.
So
I mean, I have a K-pop playlist. Surprisingly enough, people who watch Shadowverse don't love K-pop. Okay, I don't know why.
That actually completely astounds me, considering the massive Korean following that this
He's
game
getting
has.
it,
But
though. He's dancing to something.
yeah, I mean, this is, I think, an appropriate reaction to the opener he has here. It's like, all right, I have both of my magic, well, two of my magic illusionists out. I got more sigils than I'll ever need, and this is going straight into a Halo Golem and Dance of Death. He's got more damage than I think is usually necessary at any point in the game for like this kind of curve.
It's more healing than I've seen. It's more, yeah, it's good. it's gonna be exactly, oh god, that even made it better. It's gonna be exactly what I said, basically. It doesn't really matter much of what, like Bone Chimeras and Drolphus, it doesn't really matter what you do. Because, you know, Rune goes through that. They have Piercing Rune, they have Magic Illusionist sticking here forever. There's just, there's just too much they're doing, right?
Yeah, at this point, I don't know, it looks a bit more like the Hada Hada Yukai to me. I'm just watching Fantasy at this point. Like, I feel like he's already got this. He's got this game in the bag. He knows it. It's been a while
I'm not
since
gonna
I've
lie.
seen it.
I trailed off there a little bit because I noticed how he ramped it up again. How he's just.
At what point does he change the lighting in the room and have like disco lights? Like.
Oh my gosh. I wanna see, like, I wanna go back into a different timeline where his curve was not good and see if he dances this hard instead. Like.
Yeah, instead we get like this operatic, slow, like very depressing looking somber dance. But okay, well, I find this
There's
to
the
be
Soul
very
Eater. That's the
interesting.
1-up Soul Eater healing for 2.
And that too could be kind of a difference. I don't know. Fantasy is in such a good spot. I don't know if like healing definitely helps here. I don't know if Soul Eater specifically is going to.
I do think it's gonna be a little bit. It's gonna be
in fact,
too little to
doesn't
think. He's just, yeah.
Unfortunately, that exact 2 that he got off of Soul Leader. Oh, never mind. I forgot that the other one hadn't attacked. Every time I see one, I just assume one's on board, but quick
Yeah, the
game.
exact 2 that he got. It didn't matter.
Oh, yep, it
Unfortunate.
healed him, but he needed to do that about 3 more times. Just Fantasy opening so strong, just obliterates lots of that game. And as much as I'm a person who just can't develop his own opinions sometimes on like good deck matchups, I think you got me on that one. Like Burn Dirt just absolutely crushes like slow mid-range
Everything.
lists, it seems. Yeah.
I fixed that for you before you said it.
All right. Little loss of energy on Fantasy here. I think it's gonna be a bit of a slowdown. I'd imagine it'd be tough to continue to dance throughout an entire Control Blood game. But either way, here we
Yeah,
go.
what if that's actually his plan? Like his whole plan is to dance upbeat and lively during an aggro mid-range deck kind of, and then Control Blood he busts out like, you know, sleeping equipment. Right?
Just plays with his eyes closed the entire time. But here it is. Here we go. Here we are again. The Control Blood mirror, which happens once in a blue moon.
Hey there.
Once in a blood moon. Got him.
Hey.
Hey.
So, how are you doing, Envy? That's like the first few turns of a Control Blood mirror. We got some time.
So now that we're gonna be here for a while, tell me about, you know, just describe your entire day.
My entire day as I woke up, I played with my kitten. My kitten disconnected my webcam and fell asleep after doing so. And I think she noticed while watching the screen a Control Blood mirror. I was about to. Okay, this is mean. I feel like I make so many jokes about how Resident Sleeper this mirror can be, but I know every single time this is actually really, really intense stuff for the players. That's it. I said
It
I feel
can be,
bad. Now I don't
yes.
feel bad.
It's a very, very Staircase to Paradise. Very nice card to be seen playing after its adjustments as well. A lot of cards being played after their adjustments. I like that. But it's one of those games where
Hey there.
you have to like really keep track of what someone played 17 turns ago, and that's not something that the average Shadowverse player is challenged to do, right? It's very rarely that we see actually even turn 10 come down, and Control Blood, you know, turn 20 come down.
And in addition, it's like I think this is the matchup if there has to be one that just sort of befuddles the concept of what is card advantage, how does it affect the game, and I'm losing my train of thought. He has a coat hanger confirmed. Fantasy, you're not gonna do this the whole game, right? Like,
He
you
does.
realize how
Oh my
physically
God.
taxing that's gonna be.
I want it.
If he, this is quite the workout, man. Like this was his plan the whole time. He wanted to
get
go to
it,
the
playing-
gym, but he had to commit to playing Control Blood instead.
Burn calories while you play Burn Room, you know.
Yeah. It's like a really bad like commercial. Like, you too can burn calories while you burn face. Like
That's the next advertisement for Shadowverse. Sort of the next hit. Aside from just playing on the train, now you can also work out on the train while playing a Control Blood mirror. Oh, what a time it'll be when all these cards have rotated. But this is really just kind of a relic of Shadowverse. This is something that's exists very prominently now because like Blood has just continued to receive things that enable its ability to just continue to play Control. Even like Scarlet Sabrura losing the ability to go face in a pretty recent, well, semi-recent patch, still just works as such a fine tool for this sort of early game trading.
And I like the word you used right there. You used the word relic. And if you didn't, I heard that word. But
Hey.
you know, once rotations happen, a lot of these cards go away.
In fact,
A lot of the cards
I
that
can even,
Blood is currently using for that. So
you can count a couple between like Vampiric Kiss and Direbon is actually quite interesting because I haven't seen people use this card in a pretty long while, even though I've always felt like this is just one of the first cards in this game that introduced me to this is Blood. It has so much of Blood's personality in with it.
Ooh,
It's like
uh-oh.
somewhat. Is this Fantasy's plan
What's-
as well? Is he dancing out his opponent's internet connection? No way.
maybe, yeah. DDoS, please. But yeah, it's a lot of Blood's identity. There's a lot of Blood's identity like leaving. Even counting less hand, he's losing Bloody Mary, Vampiric Kiss, Temptress Vampire, other Temptress Vampire, which is completely the same as the first one. But he's losing half that hand on rotation, right? Revelation, Diabolic Drain, a lot of really important cards that like enable this kind of dirtily kind of Control Blood deck are going away in Oathbound.
Yeah, I mean, What does it really take to kind of keep Control Blood around is something that I've been thinking a while. Like at the very end of the video, the guy's like, "So won't you join me and witness Revelation?" And I like screamed out loud, like, "No, no, 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 not Revelation."
Yeah, like literally the card. By the way, we're reprinting Revelation. The exact. There we go. Right on time. The exact same card. It's honestly one of the mainstays of Control Blood. I think it's like one of the. It's not a payoff. It's not a reason to play Control Blood, but it's definitely one of like its pillars. Right. It really holds it up for sure.
Yeah. In like the entire history of Shadowverse, anytime Blood as your opponent, if they start playing slow, the number one consideration of not setting your opponent into vengeance has usually been you're overextending into Revelation. Now, we talked about this like kind of before, I think, of what is it that makes Control Blood work. It's probably in between Revelation and Diabolic Drain, if I had to name it.
And the plethora of cards in between that, somewhere in there is Righteous Devil. Oh, I think Righteous Devil's actually been cut a few times in these decks.
Yeah, we could check it out. I actually don't see one in Last's list. Actually,
right. So, but these are decks playing Dire Bond, Wardrobe Raider, and Bloody Mary, and also decks that are playing Odins. So, to be fair, these are not like normal.
Yeah. Neither list does run the Righteous Devils at all. It's pretty interesting to me. Very interesting calls, but they know what their opponent's lists are. I think this is, it's like these kinds of situations with open deck lists that really kind of inspire players to just, all right, I'm going to bring the wackiest stuff that they probably don't have any experience playing around and see how they work with that.
And there is the aforementioned Revelation wiping the board into Mask of Black Death, another like really powerful card. It's very, very, very good. Can keep you from taking damage for multiple turns. Just completely makes you not take damage. So.
And the Mask of the Black Death just kind of annihilates this Spawn of the Abyss's effect here. Though it will not prevent the damage that he sends forward, because I think his effect will pop it first.
Right, it will do 8. So. Also, Emeralda could just break the mask, and then it would do much more than 8.
Oh, indeed.
Oh boy, the double down, the double down. Oh gosh. And they're not evolving this aggressively, by the way. They're evolving this over Revelation, just for people out there. They're evolving it so has 9 health and can't be killed by Revelation.
With that said, I'm counting right now. Emeralda breaking a mask, evolved for 6, 8, 5. Is that 17?
It would be 17. If he was in Vengeance.
Oh, true, very true. I'm at this point conditioned to believe that Emeralda will always hit face, but yeah, that makes this situation a bit more difficult.
Fantasy is in Vengeance, despite his life total. That's because Blood Moon is still on his board, so Emeralda's not quite doing that yet. Could use Tempest Vampire to pop it, though, and do a total of 13, I do believe. That wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, something that we see happen very often is Blood Moon's on the field, but often this still leads players to situations where, okay, I'm just going to set them to Vengeance anyway, because what do I have to really be afraid of? Emeralda comes down regardless. So really interesting, this staring contest of Spawn of the Abysses leads to a guessing game of Mask of the Black Plague, or Death.
Mask of the Black Death, and Fantasy has stopped his dancing. He just got hit really hard. He's at 4 and is done dancing.
I didn't know he had a mask on to protect himself, had his bicycle riding helmet, and just goes down from, what, 17 to 4? I don't think this man's ever going to dance again, to be honest. That's like, you can't really recover from that.
He's done.
Physically.
No more dancing.
That's the end of his career. Oof. Scanning his hand for options. His Emeralda is active, unlike Lest's was, but...
Not too useful. You can't really be at 4 without healing here.
Right. The best he can do right now, I believe, is Diabolic Drain, and it doesn't really matter. And then he's going to have to throw in Emeralda as well to full clear. But that does deprive him of a lot of resources.
It does. It puts him 1 away from just dying to the Temptress Vampire. He's back to dancing a little bit. He's got a little bit of pep back in his step, and he's dead.
Just like that. 2 more things that we're actually seeing leave Blood soon, but yep.
Yeah,
Just
Rainbow
like that,
Claw and
fine.
Blood Wolf also leaving blood.
It's a shame that he lost the Bloody Mary earlier because that would have been also a very sick way to end it. Another thing about Control Blood is it's amassed a lot of win conditions over time. Come on, Lest, give this man his honor.
This is something that North America fantasy's praying. Like you're gonna even false hope like that. North Americans love this BM. I don't. They're all doing it.
They're not just here to try to win or get over and move on. They're just like, all right, I'm gonna have the most memorable win I possibly can.
Yeah.
But Fantasy, our boy, our hero, is not gonna lose the pit in his step. He's still going for it with his sways.
Gotta respect it. Gotta respect it. It's like unbeknownst to us, there's like a secret server going off. It's like, they're all rating their BMs against each other in another contest. They're having fun with it.
Mm-hmm. Right, but that does progress us down to the last match, which is something I feel like I've just seen over and over at this point. But Mid Shadow versus Control Blood. I feel like this matchup has already been dissected. It comes down to sort of something interesting just about how Shadow amasses so much value. Usually mid-range, I think, in Shadowverse tends to fail against very foolproof control lists like Blood. But there are times when Shadow has tools such as Eekter and Immortal Thin and Zombie Party, everything that has 7, like the number 7 on its cost, basically, that ends up amassing so much value that Control Blood can get grinded out.
Mm-hmm. And on top of that, too, Lest is holding 2 very important cards to actually ending this game. It's Phantom Howl and Cerberus, right? 11 damage combos could be really good against Blood. They get set down to 12 or something. They get set down to 10, just, don't care. They're sitting at Vengeance. They Belphegor themselves. And then they die. So
it really just comes down to kind of like mask to prevent that when you're in a Vengeance, because it's tough to heal over 13 if you're in Vengeance. Or at least it's tough to do that without committing a lot of resources at once.
And committing too many resources like that will actually just make you lose. So
right. So, decent early development. Les kind of finds like a very aggro-esque curve here. Could have me fooled for sure.
Decay and shine.
That it feels to me as though Fantasy has an extra plethora of answers, has a lot of ways to draw. I don't think the early game damage that Les is going to find here is really going to be that much of an impact.
Especially with Fantasy being able to evolve first, I don't think Les is gonna be able to get anything down that is gonna matter in the beginning.
No, I guess this always usually is how it kind of turns out. It's like, I feel like what really enables Mid Shadow to be able to keep up with card advantage is just things like Demon Eater and Soul Conversion. Just being able to run 6 total copies of cards that sacrifice one of these lower value early game followers is just like, that's kind of the answer to how Shadow just never runs out of resources.
They affectionately became known as the Cycle faction in one expansion when they had Demon Eater to combine with Soul Conversion that was already in the class.
So here's the setup with the Cerberus. Oh, he is evolving face, not wanting to commit to Fantasy, just saying, if you want to draw off of it, you do the trade.
I like that a lot too. It's you've got to close this game out. I think Les knows that if he can put Fantasy at 11 or below, right, and Fantasy not ward or heal or mask, then he just dies. I mean, Fantasy has the deck list though, so he's gonna know that, right? It's much harder to bait Fantasy into that than it is a random like ladder player or something.
Right. I don't imagine Fantasy's gonna fall for it. I feel like he sees the Cerberus, he puts the mask down. But that does give less time to develop something else.
It's a very interesting mask actually. He doesn't have another one in his hand, so once Les gets rid of that.
Yeah, I like the thought process behind it because Fantasy knows Shadow doesn't really have anything like an Albert that he's just gonna swing and break it with. It's gonna take a while for this to actually wear out, and he can't commit all the damage from Phantom Howl into it.
True. This also gives Fantasy a chance to maybe Vampiric Kiss, maybe get back up to, further away from 11.
Right.
and shine.
This all really just comes down to life management on this for fantasy. He was dancing a second ago, but now things are getting too tense for that sort of artistic expression.
Interesting that Les was able to get Fantasy's Last Evolve out of him.
Hmm. I think Fantasy just really wanted to develop the Belphegor there. He feels much safer, knowing this is a good time to sort of try to go for that sort of card advantage. His Blood Moon's about to pop, and he doesn't want to lose this mask, and this does give him the board. So, at just the kind of low risk of just milling one thing, it's a pretty solid play.
Yep, I agree. I like the play a lot. It's not too much risk. This is interesting though.
Now, would you have evolved the Immortal Thane itself there? Because this does one ping of damage. I'm trying to work out whether or not that's going to be the real difference you wanted to go for.
I guess if you have Mimi for one play point to pop the mask, I guess, and then can attack with stuff. I don't know.
Right. It is possible he just wanted to get that mask damage in case he gets Revelation anyway. But that is turn 7,
Maybe.
and that is the end of Blood Moon, so it's not like Revelation is gonna take on him. Very interesting play.
There's that other. He manages to draw the Soul Eater, the one of Soul Eater twice.
Yeah, I mean, I see some situations where Soul Eater could probably be pretty insane. Like right after a Prince Catacomb, you have a board that's completely stable, and now you trade for board and gain like what 6 to 8 defense at the same time. But I don't know. I don't feel like we've seen Soul Eater really make a super impressive like game-winning debut yet. But perhaps that's just not the sort of card.
It's
sort of
really
personality.
interesting, like that you mentioned Catacombs too, because like I think earlier we mentioned that. I think earlier one of us said that it might have been put in to make the deck last longer. And this with Cowie as well, but if anything, this was meant to snipe like aggro or mid range or something. The Soul Eater is not a card that you would put in against control because it would.
Yeah.
You know, they don't like against Bahamut's and Genesis Dragons. You don't care what your life total is. You have to actually pressure them to win. So, it is a very interesting inclusion.
And there he is. I mean, I guess it's being used the way that you said. This isn't going to be a healing Soul Eater. This is just the I want him on the board. I mean, he's a 5 cost with pre-change Sybil stats. So that's like one possible merit of him. But 5 defense is nothing to scoff at. That's more than Diabolic Drain could deal. It's pretty high above a lot of standard removal options.
But never mind.
And never mind.
Yep. That's kind of like the quintessential play of Control Blood. You think you have like kind of a board going, and that's really all Soul Eater has done in these games is bait removal. It's just kind of died. It's either been too late to do anything or bait removal. It's just a 4/5 vanilla basically.
The unfortunate legacy of Soul Eater. But we're finding ourselves getting closer and closer to Lust actually running out of resources. Like he's found a series so far. He's found. Oof.
Yeah, this
he's
is
found series between Dark Blade Fiend and Soul Eater. He's found a lot of his, as you said, aggro snipe tools, but if that's all he draws, he's not really progressing his game plan.
He needs aggression, like hardcore aggression to actually win the game, and Dark Blade Fiend, if you're on the play, can be like on curve sometimes aggressive, but not really. Soul Eater is not aggressive whatsoever. This Death's Breath is not going to do anything either.
I did get the opportunity yesterday to see Mid Shadow able to eke this out with this very sort of control-y playstyle, but so far, Celeste is just being completely deprived of card advantage and already kind of lost the board entirely to Fantasy, who's once again back at it.
He keeps like switching it up, like not dancing and then dancing. I think he's
Making it really
about
hard
his
to read.
turns a little bit. Yeah. Obviously, he knows he's in a good spot. Even Eekter coming down is not going to do much to this board. You have no way of killing your Lurching Corpse here, so it's not going to do anything except go face. And that's not what you want, so...
Alright. Well, he tried the best he can, but I don't know, I fear for him here. Like, he spent the entire game looking for the damage. I guess this sort of epitomizes the feeling of trying to play any sort of kill combo versus Control Blood is you never really get a solid window in the midst of your opponent's defensive options like Mask or Healing, where they're just vulnerable. Because a lot of other classes can't keep themselves afloat like this.
It is a it's an uphill battle for sure. It's Mask of Black Death, you know, came down at a good time like you mentioned earlier before, and there's no other class in the game really does what Control Blood does. 5 damage was established, 5 damage was healed, and then Bane on Ether, and this is just, you're in the exact same situation as before, but your board is less. It's just,
Yeah.
it feels bad.
And, you know, I feel like Les played the very best he could. I think he's I mean, as I like predicted earlier, I thought he was gonna sort of get through pretty. Like, I wasn't saying this to say, oh yeah, he can beat Fantasy, but I was thinking like Les is such a strong player. I've never really seen him make significant amounts of misplays. But here it just looks like it's the matchup. You know, Fantasy has not taken any stuck damage the entire game, and he's been playing to try to set up Phantom Howl, which I believe is definitely the correct way to go about it. But the whole game has passed, and he just hasn't found it.
Oh, 50-50, got that at least. But Shadowverse is it is a very, you know, matchup based game, so it does lend itself to matchups like this where, you know, it's not like Fantasy's bad or anything. We're not saying that, but Les is a great player, but he's been uphill battling this entire game. Even though he's going first, he's playing a deck that, you know, kind of does want to go first sometimes. And he's just had no real chance to establish anything meaningful on the board. And it's not his fault or anything. It's just the matchup, straight up.
Indeed. Ooh. In Fantasy, you know, his plan works out. Been energetic about this the whole time, gets through a Control Blood mirror and a Grinder mirror, dancing the whole time, and finally takes a breather.
Fantasy with the 2-1 win over Les. I don't think I've ever seen anybody dance that hard for that long. He was just going at it. My favorite part was a clothes hanger.
I missed that actually. Mofu mentioned that on camera. Like I didn't even see it because I was looking at the game.
I mentioned it out of shock. Like I saw